For example, suppose that you're talking with people who don't already share your views, and yet you believe your views have evidence and reason to support them. Now, if you really believe that you're in this to win, to see your ideas prevail, then you give a lot of thought to how to become a good communicator, how to reach human minds, how to appeal to human intelligence. What do you do if you're really in it to keep proving that you are a heroic but doomed martyr? What do you do if your deepest belief is you're never going to get it? You're hopelessly corrupt. I may be one of the 2 or 3 last moral people on earth. What am I doing at this party anyway? You engage in a lot of flaming rhetoric. You talk about statists, you talk about looters, you talk about parasites in contexts where you know this language is Greek to your listener. Why should you care? Your dialogue isn't directed to him anyway. It's directed to the spectator you watching you being a hero. He knows what you mean. Don't get confused over the fact that your listeners don't. The show isn't for them anyway. So, one of the signs that we want to look out for, and one of the most important signs, happens in how we approach communication. Are we really out to reach human beings? Are we really out to build a bridge to somebody whose context may be very different from our own? Do we still remember that a lot of what we now regard as self-evident once upon a time wasn't self-evident? Or do we walk into a conversation on the premise, if you don't, I'll give you one chance, after which you're irredeemably evil? You see, that could be called a communication problem, but I think it would be too superficial to describe it in that manner. I would call it a phony image problem. You're not in it to win. You're not in it to persuade. You're not in it to convince. You're not in it to reach out and touch another human mind. You're out to make yourself right as the lonely, unappreciated, misunderstood, heroic martyr you always knew you were, ever since your mother gave more attention to your brother. Well, you make an interesting distinction between, the gentleman asked a very interesting question. He says, do I see it as an educational process or as a conversion process? Do you discover libertarians or you persuade them to libertarianism? Well, this is very interesting, at least to me. When I speak of conversion, I obviously mean it in the sense of rational persuasion and not in the sense of a religious revelation. Now, some people will have discovered libertarianism long before you met them. More people than not have not. If your idea is, I'm only interested in those who are already libertarians, forget it. No intellectual position, no intellectual movement ever grew whose exponents weren't on the premise of changing people's minds. I do not believe that there is some genetically endowed elite group of people in this world who were born libertarians. I think this is vanity and self-deception. Some of the nicest people that I know personally were political liberals when I met them. Now they are libertarians. I don't see their character has changed. What has changed is their knowledge and their information. You see, one of the attitudes that I really want to discourage you against, because it's dangerous, that if you're a libertarian, you are some kind of elite, you just were born with the right instincts, you really believe in freedom and you believe in individual rights. Oh, you may have to read a book or two, but you know. Sure, there are some people who are libertarians because they are really, in a core sense psychologically, very independent, very reality-oriented, and have looked at a lot of issues very, very hard, very early in life. I promise you they are a minority. There are also libertarians who are libertarians because their father and mother are socialists. Just as there are socialists who are socialists because their fathers and mothers are Republican. I mean, the idea that all the common sense motivations that affect other people don't affect us is really invalid, and we can't afford the luxury of entertaining ourselves with those kind of delusions. If we're on the premise that, I suppose it's coming out of an objectivist background. This issue is very close to my heart because, believe me, if you believed in the philosophy of objectivism, you were not just superior, you were sacred. I mean, you were pretty close to being a holy man. And as an ex-holy man, I've had a lot of chances to look at how people filled with unresolved fears, filled with all the problems of immaturity that the rest of the world have got the most superb rationalization for not dealing with their own evolution or growth. I am an objectivist. I am a libertarian. How can you expect me not to beat my wife in such a statist-oriented world? Of course I don't know how to talk to human beings. What human beings? Listen, when Christianity came along, a lot of people who had what a psychologist might call an anxiety neurosis or an inferiority complex heard the good news that it isn't that at all. It's the virtue of humility. So by relabeling it, it was terrific. Now, a lot of very shy, very socially insecure people launched on to libertarianism or objectivism and finally got the word they don't have any problems, except that they don't know how to handle their own superiority, perhaps. We have to let go of that nonsense. We are human beings, and they are human beings. And I have more shocking news for you yet. They are us. I really would like you to be open to the possibility. They are us. Think about what that might mean. Because if you begin to entertain it at least as a possibility, you'll talk to them differently. Then it will be two human beings trying to understand each other, not two fortresses. Then something can happen. Look, I'm not an egalitarian. I believe in equality before the law, but I don't believe all human beings are born equal. But neither do I believe that adherence to any particular political philosophy automatically elevates you psychologically. It may only mean that you're saner in that area than in the rest of your life. To be a human being, and when we relate to other human beings, to relate as a human being. Because I believe not only that is the best way for us to be, I also believe in the long run it is the most effective way to be if one wants to change people's minds.